Hey everyone, it's Chris and welcome to Classic Ticket. This week, three-time Emmy Award winner Bill Oakley stops by to chat about classic film references in The Simpsons and 90s nostalgia. Enjoy.
People would agree that '90s was the golden era of like independent films.
Okay, so first of all, obviously Simpsons very reference heavy in terms of classic films, especially when you and Josh were at the helm. Anything that really stood out to you that where you're like, we've got to do this?
Simpsons references to movies were often just a shot. There were times that stories and scenes were referenced, like for instance, Cape Fear is a notable exception where the whole thing is just a parody, beat for beat parody of the movie. There are other kinds that were things that were sort of inspired by, like 22 Short Films was inspired by the storytelling style of Pulp Fiction.
Get out.
And there was at least one reference, if not more, to it in there.
Well, why do they call it?
A quarter pounder with cheese.
Was there ever a disagreement about, the reference was just too highbrow or
Never. The magic of The Simpsons, at least back in the day, was that the network, we operated in this weird bubble because the network couldn't give us any notes. So it was basically just the clowns running the circus all the time. There was nothing that was ever cut because it was too highbrow or too obscure, ever.
Back in the writer's room,
Good Lord, what is happening in there?
what were people watching, quoting, stuff like that?
People keep talking about this on the internet. There was a shared cultural heritage before streaming and the internet, but there were certain movies that you would hear about and you would see, like Citizen Kane and The Godfather and 2001 and Clockwork Orange, because you would rent them. You'd be at the video store and like, well, I heard of this, let's rent it. And so like there was a certain canon in the writer's room. There was obviously a shorthand amongst things like that.
You're right about that. Like audiences are so much more fragmented now, because pretty much whatever you want, you can get.
1978 to 1998, your choices were dictated pretty much by what was at the video store. I'd watch movies that I had heard about from the 50s or 60s because it was on the shelf and I was like, hey, why don't I give that a try? And that's how I saw movies like The Sweet Smell of Success or things like that.
Were there ever any classic films that you wish you'd referenced, but you just never found the right opportunity?
Yeah, a couple. Like I probably wanted to do. I'm sure I wanted to do a Reanimator thing in the sense. I don't know that they've probably done it since I left, but I'm sure I wanted to do a Halloween Reanimator thing. And my guess is it was too gross, or people didn't, and the rest of the people hadn't seen it in the writers' room, so we didn't do it. There's an episode that Josh and I made up, but we could never get the second act. It was basically Cannonball Run with Bart. So that was one thing that I personally wanted to do that I could never get on. I could never figure out how to.
How closely did you work with animators and storyboarders on that?
They had a whole department of people at Film Roman who would go back to the library, basically. Find these things, or they'd get the movies, they'd rent the movies, and then they'd freeze on the frame and make sure they copied it. They were very meticulous about that.
One thing I really wanted to get your opinion on, the current showrunner recently announced that they will be phasing out the couch gags.
I feel like those things, even probably as early as season 8, maybe we didn't cut them out, but we often did. Because the show's so short. When we were the show, you had to turn into 22:30, I believe, was the amount of air you had to have. Now I think it's like 18:50, and there's 4 acts instead of 3. So every second counts, and I can understand why the couch gag is phased out. And my guess is the couch gag probably was cut out of a lot of episodes, and people didn't even notice.
If you were writing for The Simpsons today, which modern directors or films might get the same treatment that classic cinema did back then?
That's a good question. They'd probably be mostly in the Halloween episodes, honestly, because it would be things like weapons, where I would want to do an entire thing of weapons or an entire thing of sinners or whatever like that. My guess is it would probably be like that, as opposed to tiny little references.
All right. Well, that is all I have, and I appreciate your time.
When you put this out, and if you have any follow-up questions or whatever, feel free.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.